I had one of those days last week. I was simply cranky. I was cranky with the kids. I was cranky with my husband, Michael. And I can tell you that it was because of the stresses at work and hormones and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, sisters, I was cranky. I'm Julie Lyles Carr. This is the Modern Motherhood podcast from AllMomDoes. And today I'm going to be talking to Becky Kopitzke, who is going to be talking to us about a topic I know all too well: how to manage your cranky. Becky, thanks for coming to the podcast today.
Thanks so much, Julie. It's really fun to be here today.
So, Becky, let my listeners know where you live and the family situation, all the stuff.
Yeah, well, I live in very chilly Wisconsin, but I do not complain because I believe that we appreciate summer more than anybody else in the universe. And I have two beautiful girls. My husband, Chad, and I have two daughters, ages 12 and 9 now. So I am knee deep in the tween years. I have lived to tell the toddler tale, and now I see it coming back full circle.
Exactly. It does fold back over on itself for sure, I think.
It sure does. Yeah, but no, we're very blessed and really trying to live a God-honoring family life, and I get tripped up as much as anybody else does. And so I just love to talk with other moms about what we can do about that, and in Jesus' name, really.
Right. And, you know, you have identified what I think is something that, as I teased our listeners with a little bit earlier, we all just have times where we are cranky moms. We have times we're spectacular moms, superhero moms, moms doing all the things, tired moms. But frankly, you're so right. We have times that we are the cranky moms. And you have a new book out called The Cranky Mom Fix: Get a Happier, More Peaceful Home by Slaying the Momster in all of us. So what inspired you to sort of explore this lane of crankiness?
Well, I'd like to tell my readers that I only write it if I have lived it. Yeah. And so the cranky mom syndrome was a big part of my life for a long time. And so I started just through experience digging into scripture to see, what does God say about this? Why am I experiencing this type of attitude toward my parenting role? And then how am I going to combat it with his truth? And so it was really a life quest for me for several years because I was a yeller. I'm grateful to say now I am a reformed yeller, but I was the mom who was raising my voice. I was constantly impatient. And I think that my responses to my children's behavior was not so much about the children as it was about me. And so I started talking with other parents, sort of gingerly at first, because I was ashamed that maybe this meant I was a really bad person. And then as I talked with other women, I came to discover that we all struggle in some form or fashion with our crankiness, our impatience, with frustrations blowing out the wrong way. And so I really took it upon myself to get serious with God about how can I remedy this? How can he help me to do that? And it became a real theme of my blogging, a theme of my messages to moms, and it all came full circle into this book, The Cranky Mom Fix. And it is something that I have lived through. I have survived to tell the tale, and I'm very excited now to be sharing this with other women who are in that same place of feeling frequent frustration and not wanting to behave that way toward their children, but they do, and they sometimes feel like there's no way out.
Do you think it's something that we have been really, as you said, you were hesitant to bring it up with friends, you were being real ginger, yes, approaching it in a very gingerly fashion. Do you think it's something that we've been hesitant to talk about in this new era? Or do you think that, sometimes, I'll tell you what I think. How's about that? And then I want to hear what you think. I feel like I see it from both sides, because on the one hand, we have all these beatific optics and Pinterest boards and all the things that have romanticized motherhood in this huge way that in some ways is reminiscent to me of the idealization, like say back in the 1950s, right? These yes, gorgeous Instagram feeds of mom just nose to nose with her darling little whatever. And the caption below may say, this was right before she blew out her diaper on me. But the visual of what I'm seeing looks so gorgeous and it all seems so lighthearted and sweet, on the way to places where it's the rant kind of posts, right? Where mom has just had it and she's just shredding the kids and shredding the husband and she's just had it and on and on and on. So where do you feel like we land? Because I think you're right. I myself would be hesitant on some days to talk about a day that had gone sideways where I was the one who really got frustrated and upset. And yet it feels like we're either way undersharing or way oversharing. So where do you land on that?
So true. And so then we see two conflicting messages. One is that I am supposed to be this perfect mother. I'm supposed to love every minute. And if I'm not, there's something wrong with me, which makes us hesitant to share because we think that now I'm strange or I have a problem or I'm an even deeper sinner because I'm struggling with my children. Or the other side of the picture, which is that, hey, this is so normal. It is okay. It's even encouraged for me to complain about my kids and to have the kind of days that everyone else is going to laugh about because I'm going to make it sound funny that I'm really hating my kids today. And so those two conflicting messages play in our heads, and we don't always know exactly where we're supposed to sit, which is why we'll discover God actually gives us some answers and some parameters for that. But what we're hearing from fellow moms in our culture today is really skewing the accuracy of how we ought to be treating our families. And so I think we don't necessarily know what to do. And it's funny you mentioned the 1950s mom and the image of that perfect parent, because my book cover actually is a spoof on that whole idea that, behind the scenes, there's probably something a lot different going on than what we are putting out into the public. So are we supposed to be telling people, showing people that I too am a Pinterest perfect mother? Or am I supposed to be actually joining the movement that says it's okay to really hate your kids today and tell the whole world about it? I think the real answer is quite somewhere in between that.
Absolutely. And I think there is a real fear that can come on moms in trying to be honest about where we stand, but at the same time, I am floored still at the level of shaming moms will put on each other in public formats sometimes.
Yes.
And we've seen a lot of this with some of the moms who have been through allowing their 12-year-old to walk to the store a quarter mile away, and all of a sudden it's a news story.
Right.
So I think there is so much question. We're told to not be helicopter moms anymore, except hover constantly in a situation like that, to be honest and raw and vulnerable about our feelings, except if you're too raw, honest, and vulnerable, then somebody's going to call you out and call it emotionally abusive. I mean, it really is a conflicting time in which I think we're striving toward greater honesty, but gosh, it seems like we're really struggling to figure out what that honesty should be. So where do you identify that we should be trying to live in all of this?
The way I like to view this is, and the way I like to approach it in my own personal parenting journey, is I want to be honest, and I want others to be honest with me, because in some of the truth is ugly sometimes, the way we feel, the way we treat our families, but always can we look at it from the lens of how can I improve this? How can I use this conviction to draw me nearer to God? Rather than, I don't just want to vent for the sake of venting. And I certainly don't want to pretend as though I'm not struggling, because that's not doing anyone a service either. But let's be honest, let's be real, for the purpose of spurring one another on toward loving good deeds. Let's spur one another on toward how now do we work together to, I almost was about to say to do better, but it's not about doing better. It's not about us and our own strength. Mm. How do we spur one another on towards seeing how God's strength can be at work in our family lives so that complaining is not the end game. Complaining should never be the end game. The frustration should never be the end game. It's real. Let's talk about it, but let's not allow ourselves to dwell there. How are we going to move beyond it so that we are always living with this desire to better please God with the way that we are parenting? Not in a sense that His love for us is dependent on how we're performing. Not at all. Not at all. But are we open to the idea that it's not okay to dwell in that place of complaining, dwelling in that place of being frustrated and venting about it and sharing with one another solely for the purpose of complaining? If we are going to be sharing and being real, we ought to be doing it in a manner that's going to spur one another on toward becoming better, becoming more like Christ, in a way that is filled with grace for one another. We're all on a different journey. We all have different personal convictions. Right. So can we learn from that, hold fast to our own personal convictions based on what God's told us to do, but not judge another mother for perhaps having a different conversation with God? It's interesting you bring up the whole idea of, do I let my 12-year-old walk to the store by herself? Because I have been criticized in both ways. I've been criticized for being the helicopter mom and being too involved. And then I've been criticized for those times when I think, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be so hands-on, and so I'm going to back off. And then I'll hear other mothers say, well, you can't do that. You should have been better present for that.
Right.
Where do we stand? And so much of it has to be a personal conviction between us and the Lord, our spouse, our family, individually. We need to be listening to what God is telling us in our individual families, and then supporting one another, supporting other moms. The whole point being, let's direct each other to God. Talk to Him about it. And we can support each other, but I don't want to criticize another mother for perhaps having a different conviction from mine. And that becomes really messy really fast if we all think we're supposed to have the same personal convictions within a biblical context.
Absolutely. And I've seen that go sideways time and again, where moms will, congregate out of a sense of support. And then before it's all over with, it turns into some weird episode of the Stepford Wives when it comes to our mothering. So we do have to be so cautious. Back with Becky right after this. Fall is around the corner. It's time to refocus to make the end of the year strong. That's why I'm so excited for you to take a look at my newest project from Abington Women called Footnotes. It's a 4-week study on 4 characters from the Bible that you might think of as minor, but who have major impact. We sometimes feel bogged down in all the little things, the errands, the laundry, the cleaning. It's a powerful reminder that in God's eyes, little things are big things. The little things you do today can resonate next year, into the next decade, into the next century. Make this a Footnotes fall and take a few weeks to see for yourself how 4 people you may have never even noticed before speak into your life today. Footnotes, wherever books are sold, and look for the DVD teaching set at abingtonwomen.com/footnotes. Now, I think there are a lot of reasons that we legitimately get cranky. I mean, yes, we can begin to have this awareness that we don't want to be complaining just for complaining's sake. And we want to make sure that we're being honest about what our emotions are. But there are a lot of reasons that are very legit as to why we can get to the end of a hard day and feel that cranky thing coming on. I think one of the things that I see that's really interesting amongst the women that I serve is I have all these young moms who are doing all the things. They are running the side hustle business and they're trying to keep part-time hours working as a dental hygienist, and they've got the 3 little bitty kids at home and they're trying to be involved in church. And statistics tell us that they are also still carrying 80 to 85% of all of the household chores, of the child care, of making sure that school stuff's getting done. And so I see why women at times, when we live in this quote unquote modern culture with all of these opportunities available, and yet we still seem to be abiding by more quote unquote traditional rhythms when it comes to the assignments and responsibilities within the home and within kids. I see why women can get cranky. Do you think that plays a role?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And for me personally, exhaustion and distraction, 2 of my biggest triggers. And where does that come from? Because I am a victim of that hustle culture as well. I have a freelance writing business. I'm writing books. I'm blogging. I am doing writer coaching work. I'm helping my husband with his business. And I am very involved volunteering at school and at church. And before you know it, I look at a pile of laundry and I start resenting the fact that I still have to fold that laundry.
Right.
And so I do believe it comes down to a matter of, if not choices, then at least acknowledging our choices and having open conversations with our other family members about how we're going to work together to split the labor. And my husband's fantastic. He's very, very supportive of the fact that I'm writing and I run a business on my own. Also, at the same time, we do view my role as primary nurturer. I'm the one who runs the kids' places for the most part. He'll jump in when he can. But we have open conversations regularly about, okay, even in every morning, really, what's on your plate today? And then we'll talk about how we can team up together to manage it. If that open communication is not happening, resentment can so quickly erode relationships, and it can dictate our attitudes toward the people around us. And is it possible for a woman to do it all? I think it's more likely a woman can do it all, not all at once. Right. I think of the Proverbs 31 woman. She kind of did it all, but it was in various phases of her life. And so I would never be a person to tell a woman that she should not pursue a passion, or that she should not be working, or that she should give up all of her household responsibilities. I would love to, but I still feel as though that is something I am still called to do for the family. But it gets to a point where we need to be creative with our family members, get honest with our husbands. If we're married, if not, talk to a dear friend that you can rely on, who can hold you accountable. Talk about some ways that you can really figure out what is on your plate, what maybe shouldn't be there, or how can you work together to allow all of the things to coexist in a manner that doesn't so easily trip our cranky trigger. And part of that, a big part of that, Julie, if I can go this direction, big part of that is self-care. We get so worn down by all of the activities and all the responsibilities and all the pressure we put on ourselves that we easily forget to take care of ourselves, and then we have nothing left to pour out to the other people. Cranky is very easily our default if we are not fueling our own spiritual and physical and emotional needs. And so in that whole idea of women can do it all, women need to do it all, women are still responsible for 85% of the home responsibilities, we feel this tremendous pressure to do it, to the point where often we neglect ourselves, which is only further depleting us, to the point where we really have nothing but crankiness left at the end of the day. I've been there. I'm still there many days if I'm not cognizant of it and how I'm going to tackle that.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to expand upon what self-care really is, because Becky, I've gotten this so wrong so many times through the years. You know, when my twins were babies, so here are these babies of 8 kids, and we've just moved to this new city, and I don't really know anybody. Self-care, with all the crazy that was going on and just trying to maintain some kind of, some kind of getting people fed on a quasi-regular routine, self-care for me ended up being the big Econo-sized bag of peanut M&Ms, because I could do it on the run.
Yes.
I could be with the children and do that. But, enough of those Econo-size bags of peanut M&Ms, and you are now lapsing into something that goes way south of self-care and becomes very self-sabotaging. Yeah. And there have been times, too, that self-care to me was like, well, we can't afford for me to go do a spa treatment or a whatever. Therefore, I can't do self-care. And I, in the last few months, have had this revelation. One of the grandest things I can do in terms of self-care today, and I have fought this for years, Becky. Oh my goodness, I've fought it so hard. But is to just get adequate sleep. I mean, sometimes that can be the gold standard of self-care, but it doesn't have the optics of going to the spa day. It doesn't have the ooey gooey chocolate kind of thing to it. And so sometimes reducing it back down to those things that we really, really need to function well, I think those can be some of the greatest places of self-care. And yet we sometimes are very challenged by how to identify what true self-care looks like. What does it look like for you?
Oh, it is the basics, and I have to laugh because there is a mother out there with a newborn up 5 times a night who wants to strangle us right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. She's probably turning the podcast off, and I'm apologizing. I know. I'm sorry. We've been there.
Yes, we have absolutely been there. And even in that season of life, self-care can look, for me, it was as simple as nap time. I had toddlers who wanted mommy to tuck them in and sit with them. And it would be frustrating sometimes because I really just had other things to do. I wanted them to go down for the nap, go down beautifully, fall asleep, stay asleep for 2 hours so mom can do the things. Instead, I discovered one of the best ways that I could fuel myself was by meeting them halfway. I would sit in their bedroom while they fell asleep. It helped them calm. They fell asleep more easily, so they actually took the nap, and I took that time to sit and read. Or I took a project that I wanted to work on. I just did it in their bedroom while they were falling asleep, and that was my quiet time. That was my self-care. It had to be very creative because it actually was both self-care and childcare because I was tending to what they needed.
Right.
But at the same time, I was tending to what I needed. And I thought, fine, if you can't beat them, join them. So I sat on that bed and I would read a book. All my daughter needed was to know that mom was there. Mm-hmm. And I was able to spend that time, a good half hour. I would stay in their room reading or taking care of some emails that I wanted to respond to. And that time became my time until the point where they grew out of the naps and I missed it because I realized that had become my time. There are creative ways to get that self-care, whether it is just a few minutes to yourself to breathe, or it is that spa treatment, which is, few and far between, those kinds of opportunities. So I really held, now that my daughters are actually sleeping again as tweens, they told me years ago, women would tell me, someday you're going to be dragging these children out of bed. Yeah. I did not believe it.
But now you're there.
So true. It is so true. Just this morning, they were both frustrated with me that I let them oversleep past 7. So it really does change. But even so, now I put those parameters in place for myself to get adequate sleep. Why? Because I know myself, and exhaustion is a trigger for me. So I deliberately put parameters into my life so that I am wrapping up my day by 9 p.m., asleep by 9:30. Some women are thinking that's crazy. And it is crazy for some women, but for me it's necessary. Because if I don't get an adequate 8 hours of sleep, I am a monster. And I don't want to be that for my family. So I have just discovered what the triggers are for me, and then I put some safeties in place in my life to protect against those triggers. And for me, that is as simple as a decent night's sleep when I can get it.
Absolutely. And this is going to sound like a very strange one that I discovered for myself, but maybe I've got a fellow extrovert, introvert, ambivert mom out there who this will resonate with. I would find that when I would go and, have the nails done or get that gift card for a massage and go in and do it, I just felt this need to keep nurturing people. And so I would end up doing therapy for the nail tech or the massage therapist. Oh, really? And then what happened next in your childhood? And I would leave that circumstance feeling that I had really been helpful, and also that I had not really closed the loop on taking a moment for myself and wrestled with, well, am I just selfish? But I finally gave myself permission. When I get to have those little opportunities to sneak away, I'll say to someone, hey, I want you to know, I so appreciate the fact that you do nails, or you do a massage. I think it's incredible. And I want you to know I care about you as a person, and I'm going to be quiet and probably fall asleep during this. And I don't want you to think it's that I don't value you. I'm just trying to take a little time for myself. And everyone's been wonderful. It was an expectation I put on myself, and I was sort of subverting what I think God was trying to allow me to receive. And instead, I was turning it into something that depleted me more. And so I think there are those times, if you're the mom that you need a girls' night out, but then somehow it turns into you're the one who's planning, you're the one calling to make the reservations, you're the one trying to huddle all the girls up, and you discover by the end of that evening, you're exhausted. You may be pulling what I was pulling. And sometimes a great way to instill an environment of self-care is to just promise yourself, I'm just going to be quiet. Yes. Going to let somebody else carry it for a little bit. Now, I think another thing that plays into the cranky mom factor, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I was recently in a meeting where we were discussing some upcoming different women's initiatives and things we were doing. And someone started down the lane of talking about, well, momming is so hard. The struggle is real. And I let him go for a little bit. And then I put up a timeout and I said, I got to be honest. There are so many women today who would love to be moms who are not able to through a series of biological or relationship issues. And bottom line, being a mom is not about being a martyr. It's just not. It's a gift. It's hard. We learn a lot of things. But I think sometimes when this martyr spirit invades our motherhood, it cranks up the flames on crankiness to a level that gets really interesting. When we begin to self-pity because we had a hard day momming, somebody cut us off or even those days that are legitimately hard with a kid who's really, really struggling. How do we avoid allowing a martyr spirit to kind of get in there and complicate things?
Oh, yeah. I immediately count my blessings. I start counting my blessings. And I remind myself that everything I'm complaining about right now, if it were gone tomorrow, I would be devastated. Mm-hmm. Truly. Mm-hmm. And that is, and I say that kindly. I don't. It is difficult. Parenting is very difficult. And I am the first person to come alongside you and say, yes, let's do this together. It is not an easy endeavor, but it is a worthwhile endeavor. And it is a tremendous gift from the Lord. Scripture is very clear on that. And the fact that if you have a child, whether it's by birth or adoption, if that child is in your family, you have a calling from the Lord, and it is a big one. And I believe sometimes we become too quick to count the negatives of that responsibility, of that blessing, rather than focusing on the positives. And so I will stop when I notice I'm getting into that mentality of martyrdom or constant complaining, I will take a step back and I'll just start looking around at my environment, and I will find whatever I can to be grateful for. So, for example, I'll look around this room and I'll see a pair of little shoes in the corner. That is a sign that I have a healthy child who can run, and I'm grateful for that. And then I look around the room some more and I see a bag of goldfish crackers wide open getting stale, right? Could complain about that. But instead I look at that and I flip it and I say, I have a child who is healthy, who can eat these crackers, who I enjoyed sitting with, talking to her about this television show yesterday while she ate the crackers. And so it's a matter of looking at those things we complain about, flipping them, and seeing the positive in them. It's that sort of age-old meme that you see where, thank you, Lord, for these dishes because it means I have people to sit at the dinner table with and eat, right? It really works. If we start looking at all the things we're complaining about, flip them on their end, and find a positive to be grateful for, I think we will quickly realize that those complaints are only eating away at our own souls. Mm-hmm. And we can reach a point where they are actually affecting our children. What kind of message are we sending to our children if we're letting them hear us complain? I see that from a lot of moms. Yeah. In front of their children, they'll talk about how difficult it is to raise this kid, or how she's just driving me nuts today. And what kind of message is that sending to our kids? And that is definitely not the unconditional love of Christ. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to complain, let's do it in a confined setting where the kids are not hearing us. And let's do it, again, always for the purpose of spurring one another on toward love and good deeds. Take those complaints, spin them on their head, turn them into a positive. I'll bet you there are very few complaints that don't have some sort of bright side. It's because these complaints erode our own hearts. We're only hurting ourselves when we allow ourselves to park there. So let's get out of it by looking at the positives and being grateful, because gratitude is a wonderful combat for most everything in parenting.
Absolutely. And one thing I've had to be cautious about through the years when it comes to monitoring my own level of cranky is I received a really beautiful gift several years ago when God gave me one of my best friends who is someone who has delighted so much in being a mom. I mean, just laughs and finds the funny in it and in the mess and in the mud. And she really helped me change my perspective because I, in a well-intentioned way, but had also formed some friendships with some other moms who had more of a challenge in going down that complaining road, talking about all the hard, complaining about the husband, complaining about the children's behavior. And when I began to see modeled for me this really beautiful example of somebody who just had a great time with her kids. Yeah. It was so powerful. And I think I had that to some degree initially when my first two were little, and then almost felt like I was doing something wrong because there were other moms around me who seemed so stressed and so, upset. And there was so much drama. And I thought, am I just not being a caring enough mother? I don't have this kind of drama going on. And then when God intersected my life with this really precious, precious friend of mine, and I was able to just see her celebrate my babies, her babies, muddy feet, all the rest, and do it with such joy. It really helped change the climate. So I think for some of us, Becky, we need to take a really good look at the climate of people that we have around us and have an honest evaluation of that. If the MOPS group is getting real negative, not that MOPS would. I'm just saying if your table, MOPS is awesome. We love MOPS. MOPS has been a sponsor for this podcast. We love MOPS. But I'm saying if that circle around you is really struggling, do you think it's valid to start looking for a group that helps you be honest and navigate the things that are challenging, but always keep that place of gratitude in the forefront?
Yes, we have to be cautious of the voices we're allowing in our heads. And we can very easily allow other people to influence how we look at our own parenting. And like you said, that goes both ways. I have some wonderful, joyful mom friends in my life as well. And I appreciate them because they show me the possibilities. Mm-hmm. They show me that it is possible to experience joy or to not be, to not fly off the handle when those muddy boots come in the room. And I so appreciate those women. I really do. And I do believe it's so important to find some voices like that who are going to always point you back, not in a shaming way, never in a shaming way, but just to point you back to the blessings. Yes, we have struggles and they are authentic, and let's be real with one another about those. But again, let's not park there. Let's not dwell there. Let's make sure that we are receiving those voices and those examples of how we can see the blessing in the mess. And that seems sort of trite these days, doesn't it? That's such sort of a buzzword, blessing in the mess. But there is a lot of truth behind it, because if we can't look for the joy in our challenges, if we're not looking for it, we're never going to see it. But it's almost always there.
I love that. Well, the book is The Cranky Mom Fix. Get a happier, more peaceful home by slaying the momster in all of us, with Becky Kopitzke. Thanks so much for being with me today, Becky.
Thank you, Julie. This has really been a delight.
Connect with Becky on Instagram, and be sure and check out our show notes at allmomdoes.com. I'm on the socials too, and you'll find me at Julie Lyles Carr on all the places. Please be sure and subscribe and share wherever you get your podcast, and leave us a shiny review, and I might just get to share it here on the podcast. Rebecca Beckett is our content coordinator. Our producer is Donna Toti, and they deserve a big thank you. I am so grateful for these two women and all they do for the podcast. Looking for inspiration, information, encouragement, and community? You'll find it all at allmomdoes.com and on the socials. Be sure and check out allmomdoes.com. I'll see you next time on the Modern Motherhood Podcast.